Welcome to Ugly Oysters. This video is one of a series of discussions based on Jordan Peterson's book Beyond Order. Today we look at Peterson's chapter called Do Not Allow Yourself to Become Resentful, Deceitful, or Arrogant, focusing on the eternal characters of the human drama, which offers us a picture of the good and evil we will all face in this life. Can it be possible that we must all invite the evil queen to our daughter's christening? I have posted timestamps below if you wish to locate anything specific, and I do hope you enjoy the view while considering these important ideas for our lives.
Yeah.
Good morning.
So go ahead.
Oh.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you today?
Good. New haircut, huh?
Oh yeah. Just we could call it a shave.
Okay, yeah. It's kind of like a shave.
Yeah, getting ready for my military drills. And
Yeah.
and your makeup is looking brilliant
Put on
today.
the Germany uniform, then that would be perfect.
That would be perfect. I understand they were very fashionable, those Germans.
Yeah.
Actually, they're
I just
fashionable.
want how to become a Tyrant.
Oh,
That's cool.
oh yes. Well, that's yes. Tell me about that.
It's a new, it's a Netflix produced. And it's really cool. I think, especially in this kind of a time, this show is give lots of good conclusions, like how you, a normal person, according to the rules, can be a tyrant.
That's interesting. I didn't know
Netflix
was doing
there
that.
is a different kind of rule. Rule number 1, rule number 2.
Oh, really?
But when you look around the world, you will see, oh, that's true, you know. They actually have the same principle, like how they achieve to the power. That they really have the rules, so it's good.
So maybe how to become a tyrant or tyrant, we would say tyrant,
Okay.
might come into conversation when we review Peterson.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Okay, you go ahead.
I was going to make one more statement about fashionable uniforms. You know, in Thailand, the police wear very tight pants and very tight jackets.
Oh, I see.
So, you know, it's kind of funny because if they're young and handsome, it looks pretty good. But if they're getting a little bit my age, well, now they're walking around looking like ostriches. Anyway, okay. So Tyrants and Uniforms. So we are on Rule 11, Part 2. Rule 11 is do not allow yourself to become resentful, deceitful, or arrogant.
Yes.
And the first part we looked at was Peterson's justification for how to deal with resentment, deceit, and arrogance, which is that you need to look at the world from a storied point of view, not from a material point of view. And he gave his justification for that. And we talked about that. I don't know why, by the way, the thought just came into my mind. I don't know why he picks those 3 things. Resentment, deceit, and arrogance. Like, those seem to be, I don't know if he will say later, but those seem to be just kind of arbitrary, which doesn't seem like Peterson's nature. It seems like there should be a plan. Like, why didn't he talk about lust or gluttony or greed or some of these other sort of sins? Maybe maybe he believes his audience will automatically believe that resentment, deceit, and arrogance are problems in our day, maybe. But anyway, because those three things are not material problems, you can't solve them in material ways. You must go to story. So we're on the second section. He's already justified story. Now he wants to explain what are the characters in the eternal drama called life. You ready for that?
Sure.
Okay.
But I want to add something. I think because resentment, arrogance, and what the other?
Resentment, arrogance, and deceit. Lying.
Deceit. Yeah. Deceit. I think this is a basic portrait of the devil. You know, when you watch children's movie or adults movie, it's like a basic three elements for a devil look like.
Yeah. Well, I know deceit, lying. I mean, lying has got to be damaging both to the liar and the one being lied to, because lying is just not admitting what's real.
Because you see, if you only have resentment, that maybe you are a bad-tempered people, or whatever. But if you plus deceit, that make you more like secretly hiding back, hurt people, suddenly, and because you hide it for so long. And then you have the arrogant. That means you despise the human being.
Yeah.
The life. So, I mean, all of these things together make it evil, make a demon, but not just one thing. You can't just identify a devil. I think that's why he put three things together.
Yeah. I just think that there are maybe several possible formulations that a person could use. I want to know if he gives a reason why those three. Maybe that'll come up again.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll just say my understanding of what he presents here, and then you can just tell me if you got the same impression or anything different. I'm just going to give a basic summary, and then after that there are several things in there that I think are interesting, and I'll just comment on them. If you have some comment you can make, and that'll cover this section. This is the middle section. There's still, one more section after this. All right. So basically he outlines four characters in the story of life. The one is a dragon who hides a treasure. There's kind of a positive negative aspect. There's the sinister and dangerous dragon who guards a treasure. Then there's the evil queen or the caring monarch. The biting bitch or the benevolent beauty, So that's the dragon, the queen. There's the king, the authoritarian tyrant, the conservative. I shouldn't throw that out. Anyway, and the wise king, the authoritarian tyrant or the wise king. And then lastly, there is the Satan-Christ duality. Or he also says Cain and Abel. Or adversary and hero. Or destroyer and healer. I would also add, I don't know why he didn't, because I think if he's using biblical metaphors, Esau and Jacob have a lot more metaphorical possibility there. So I would add Esau and Jacob, because...
Okay.
Now, so there's the dragon, the queen, evil or benevolent, the king, authoritarian or wise, and the Satan-Christ combination. And these have metaphorical parallels. He equates the dragon and the treasure it hides to chaos. He equates the evil queen or the caring monarch to nature. He equates the authoritarian tyrant and the wise king to culture. And he equates the Satan-Christ dualism to the self. These are kind of brother twins locked in combat, he said. So you have two sets of metaphors, but then he goes and makes a third set of metaphors as well that parallels all of this. He says the chaos or the dragon is the sky. Nature or the evil or benevolent queen is the ocean. Culture or the tyrant king or the wise king is the island in the ocean. And then the self or the Satan-Christ combination is the brother twin locked in combat in the middle of the island. And that's a set of characterizations that he lays out in this section, and then he explains each of them, expands on them, and then at the end of the section, he says, that's life. They are life. And if you have only a partial knowledge of this cast, or these characters, or these elements, you could say, if consciously or unconsciously, if you're not fully aware of all of these, how all of these contribute to the story, then you will be naive, you will be unprepared, and you will likely be possessed by deceit, resentment, and arrogance. So, just knowing about these things is already an antidote to the sins of deceit, resentment, and arrogance. And he says that it seems like the essential problem is being naive. You can't be naive to these things. If you're naive, that means you don't know all these elements. That means you are going to become a deceitful, resentful, arrogant person. And remember, these things can only be addressed subjectively. And then I just thought, all of these are kind of essential, how can I say, they're like, they break down a more essential conflict, which is between the hero and the chaos, you know? It's like, Joseph Campbell talks about every person, the basic mythology that everyone lives by is that they are the hero of their own story. And I think, hero of what? Well, you're the hero when you contend with chaos. But Peterson's saying, that's right, but it occurs on these levels. You have to be the hero in relationship to yourself. You have to be the hero in relationship to your culture, in relationship to nature, and in relationship to chaos generally. But it's a little more sophisticated than that. Peterson's also saying that there is a place for the dragon, for the authoritarian tyrant, for Satan. Like, it's not just that you try to crush those oppositions. You just recognize that they're there in all of life. I think that's my understanding.
Yeah, I think so.
Did you?
The more and more, he just pointed his fingers to himself.
To Pete?
I felt I watched his formal video,
Yeah.
and the recent video. I think before, like maybe he would talk to his audience more. It's like more tell what you should do, you know.
Yeah.
And now he is more and more think that he will always say like the evil is in ourselves. So that's why he brought up like Jesus save one by one, not a kingdom, not a state, a nation. So which I felt like he ultimately come on to this real truth seeking path. It's the only way, I think. It's the only way to the Rome that you finally point your fingers to yourself.
So he's not setting out an agenda whereby you conquer the world. He's setting out an agenda where you conquer yourself, so to speak.
Yeah. Because like ultimately, I think only when you point your finger to yourself, you will solve the obstacle. You will solve the problem. You will like really become a hero. I think if you just always point the fingers to the others, like the show I just watched, the Tyrant thing, I think if you point too much to the world, actually finally, you will become, maybe at first you become the wise king, then later you may become this tyrant. So it's all can like change, you know?
Yeah.
It's like the energy. It's like yin and yang. It's changing. It's the energy changing. So just like Gaddafi, I don't know, in Chinese we call Gaddafi. That's the Libya.
Oh, Gaddafi, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gaddafi, yeah. So he at first he should be the wise king, right? But later,
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
at first, yeah, he like all of these people, like King Samson.
Oh,
The first king, the first one in North Korea.
The first North Korean Kim leader.
Yeah. So he also, you know, anti-Japanese. So like our leaders, same thing. Like I mean, they all like the wise king at first. Well, then they become like bigger and bigger. So this is the Peterson's describe this character is arrogant. So they become more and more arrogant. And they try to point the fingers to others, make them they more arrogant. Then how they can sustain that? So they will use deceit, like cheating or something, the device. So at that point, it would change them to be this kind of tyrant figure. So it's just easy to change. I mean, we're human beings, not that much wonderful as we think. So finally, you need to point the finger to yourself. That's the path to Jerusalem, I think.
So, you know, in our culture, I think probably just about anyone who grows up in our culture knows the phrase, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, that's I know.
But what Peterson, I think, taking what you say, I'm just taking what you say and extending it. So what Peterson is saying, but that's true about you also. It's not just the prime minister or the president or the boss or whatever. Yeah, maybe. It also...
I think as long as you think yourself are absolutely righteous.
Yeah.
It's the start point of decay.
Yeah.
It's the start point if you actually become someone you don't know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing I'm thinking about is that the way he sets this out, at least the way I said it, I don't know about the way Peterson said it, the way I said a summary of Peterson is it makes it sound like the benevolent king needs to defeat the tyrant the the kind queen needs to defeat the bitch, whatever. But Peterson's overall framework is that we need both. We need chaos and we need order.
Yeah. Because I also think, like this morning, I'm thinking, what is a hero? If there is no obstacle, no challenge, so how is hero gonna form? You see, like a hero rise from chaos, obstacle, challenge. So otherwise, there is no hero, right? Why are you at a wise king? What do you do to be? What you did, like to be the wise king? You should be like overcome the obstacle other people can't. Yeah. That make you the hero and the wise king. So what's the obstacle? It's sort of a kind of like a chaos.
Yeah.
Or sort of like a wideness, you know, like so I think it's just life.
Yeah.
If there is no this life, there's no witness this life, you very can be your own hero. So I think by this thinking, maybe it's easier for us to accept the problems in life. Like whatever obstacle we met, whatever challenge we met, whatever cards we are being, you know, distributed, we just play that cards.
Yeah. I think, to respond to what you're saying, I think whoever it is that resides inside me, I need to know when to call on the wise king, and I need to know when to call on the tyrant. Sometimes the tyrant needs to have a say. Sometimes, because he talks about, when he talks about the two queens, he says that there's the story of Sleeping Beauty, and in Sleeping Beauty, Aurora, the beauty, is going to have a wedding, and the parents don't invite Maleficent. Maleficent is the evil queen. They don't invite her. And that creates big problems.
I think it's not she has a wedding. I think it's just a bit because she was born.
Oh, yeah, right. And not the wedding. Yeah. She's going to a christening, I should say.
Yeah, yeah.
But they don't invite the Maleficent. That's the point. So
yeah.
Peterson says that's a big mistake.
It's a kind of a too pure thing. It's why, like, all of these cults going on, it's people's nature. They're afraid of that chaos. They want to, like, exclude the chaos out of their life.
Right.
They make life too pure.
Right.
So I also think of that, just like the Mussolini of Italy at that time. It said he don't shake hands with people because it's dirty. He want to keep himself too clean, you know? So, too clean is a problem. Like, too pure, too righteous, always a problem. Too righteous bring you to the tyrant. Sorry, always cut the words.
No, I'm just thinking, should I talk about my mother or not?
Did you get what's the mother thing is?
Oh, because she wanted things so clean, you know? Like there was a room in our house that you couldn't even sit in unless you had a shower and changed your clothes. And
yeah.
The feeling I had from that, apologies, Mother, if you're watching this, but you might as well know, the feeling I had from that was kind of lifelessness, like sterilization, like, you know how you boil medical equipment before you do surgery, like it's just too pure. No,
yeah.
you can't grow plants in inert, you know, like there's got to be biota, there's got to be the insects and the animals, you know.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a lab and a forest? Well, a lab
Yeah.
is sterile and clean, and a forest is
Yeah.
full of life, but it's got worms and ticks and things that are going to eat you and bite you, but it's alive.
Even now we're breathing. We may be breathing in something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So you just kind of like you keep out all the bacteria. You just want to keep yourself so clean.
Yeah.
The thing.
Yeah.
It's actually you just you can't live this way.
Yeah, it's
If you want to cast away the thing that keep on you living, so you can't live on this way. So that's the demon.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of death philosophy. Too clean. Too pure.
It's like Hitler. He would shower 3 times a day. It's also a wanting clean guy, you know.
Yeah.
It's because then he would think Jewish like the
virus.
Parasite. So he want to keep everything clean.
Yeah.
So keep clean this desire is not bad, but when you realize it, when you try to make your world so clean, it will cause problem, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and the flower, you know, they come out of the dirty soil.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's why I think God really a very humor guy, because you see, he let you can't deny. Do you want to eat your fruits?
Well,
you know, like what you use to fertilize your soil to grow the foods.
Yep.
It's kind of like we never can flee away from the dirt. So you can't. It depends on it.
It reminds me of a quote, and I'm going to say the quote improperly, but I will write it on the video properly. It's something like the pavilion of pleasure comes out of the palace of excrement. Excrement is poop. Shit.
What's pavilion mean?
The place of pleasure comes from the palace of excrement.
I see.
Mm-hmm. Like the goodness of life essentially comes out of these dirty places.
And also, like, if you never know the dirty, how you know clean?
Yeah.
If you never know the bad, how do you know the good?
Yeah.
Like, we Chinese will say different. We will say, too clean water will never have fish.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that one time.
Yeah, so I think, if you want to keep so clean, you don't produce any life there.
I like that. That's a really wise statement. Water that's too clean will not have fish.
Yeah, and also the next sentence is, if you scan the people so clearly, there is no human being.
Yeah. All right.
So, just allowed to be, human being, accept the dirtiness or darkness of the people. So, then you will have friends. Otherwise, you live by your own, and you're also gonna die.
Yeah. Well, that's good preaching, sister. Okay.
I'm not a sister.
Okay. I'd like to comment on some of the things he said, which might be by the way, or might be included in his overall philosophy, but still interesting to me.
Yeah, sure.
One thing he talked about, he talked about how people, when it's in his chaos section, and he's talking about how long ago people, when they're sitting by the campfire, they feel safe, And in that circle, there's order and there's safety. But just take a few steps away from the campfire and go into the forest, and there's already risk that there's some danger, some predator prowling around, and there's this fear, and it's deeply embedded. It's part of our natural outlook. And he said it's kind of the same thing that happens when children at night are afraid of the dark. And he says what a lot of parents will say is, oh, you don't need to be afraid, there's nothing there. And that also seems like a natural response, but Peterson thinks it's the wrong one. You need to say to the child, yeah, there are scary things out there. There are things that are dangerous, and you need to be prepared to face them. And what he's getting at there is the naivety that we sort of instill in our children. It's better to acknowledge that fear and say, you're right, there are scary things. And I love this. In fact, I've already used this with my own son. He was starting a new year at a school recently, and he had been there for the first day. It was just an hour long, and then came home, and then the next day would be a full day. And in that hour, he had a situation that really embarrassed him. It turned out that nothing actually happened to or was done to him. It was all in his head. But he was afraid of going to school the next day. And I said, well, there's good reason to be afraid. There's lots of things that could go wrong, but you can face it. And we can talk about it. We can deal with it. And I think from this day forward, I'm never going to diminish the concerns of my child if he raises them. Because he's right. No matter what. Whatever he's afraid of, he's right. There is stuff there. The issue is to be able to be prepared to face those things, not hide from them. And I think that's what that being clean is all about. It's trying to hide from reality, not enter it and embrace it and flow with it. So, yeah. So not how to be safe, but how to face danger.
Yeah. Danger or negative feeling or everything, belong to that inside. Because I also see there is an example, like if people too naive think the world is so beautiful,
Yeah.
And they don't have the cautious.
Yeah.
So that they're going to be hurt badly someday,
Right.
if they don't have the cautious.
Right.
And also I saw some women, if they think too naively about affection, love, they may never accept there will be lower tide of time, or there will be negative in their love story, So they kind of have their high standard for their partners, and it's also unbearable for other people to, every time should be in this positive situation, positive mood. It's just not real.
Yeah.
But if they take, that's the reality. If they just take like half of the life, only optimistic, only good, only day up, then they will never accept the other part of the life. And they always actually live in the miserable mood then, because they think the thing they should have, they didn't got. So, now I'm talking about my mother.
I see. Well, when you talk about that, I think about myself. And I think, times are acceptable, down times are acceptable, but then I make a distinction. That's my surface life. In my inner life, I always want to have hope no matter what. Down or up, even in my low, surface-wise, inside my deepest aspect, I don't want to be hopeless. I always want to have... I don't know if it's I want to have it or I just always do have it. I think it's necessary, because if it gets right down deep inside and you lose hope, then that's pretty scary. I don't know. Like, somehow I think there has to be this survivability that can overcome all of that. That's kind of the essential self against the essential chaos. I will survive no matter what. Maybe that's what you're talking about too. That's learning to accept that things will be up and things will be down. That's and how can you accept that? Well, something in your core just recognizes that that's okay. That's part of life too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then on the next page, he makes a comment about how our brain is. And he says the oldest part of our brain, the very root at the bottom of the hypothalamus, there's it's called the hypothalamus, pardon me. And it's at the top of your spinal cord. It's where your instinctual responses are. Like, if you go to the doctor and he taps your knee and your leg kicks out, that reaction comes from the hypothalamus, I understand. I could be wrong. In other words, you don't think about kicking your leg automatically kicks out. You don't process the thought. It doesn't even go to your brain. It stops at the base of your neck. Well, he said there are two main things that you can find in the hypothalamus. Half of it is responsible for self-preservation. And he means hunger, thirst, and defensive aggression. As well as reproduction. So there's that. This is kind of like facing the danger of life, you know? Being ready to fight for your food, fight for your thirst. But the other half of the hypothalamus drives us to explore unexplored territory. And I think that's interesting. That's again that yin and yang. One half seeks to preserve and protect and to just keep that safety. And the other one wants to launch out into danger, into the unknown, the unexplored. It's asking what's out there. Yeah, so he uses that to talk again about the dragon and the treasure. There's treasure there, but you gotta contend with the dragon to get it. And I just like that image. And a lot of other writers come to mind to me as I read through this chapter. So I spent a lot of time actually trying to locate a section from the writer C.S. Lewis, because he told a similar story as Peterson does here, but he told it in a kind of mythological way. And I'd like to read 2 paragraphs from his book that illustrate this same thing. Is that okay? All right. I downloaded it onto my phone, so just give me a second here. This is C.S. Lewis, and it's about this chaos. Life is a dragon, but the dragon hides a treasure. Peterson wrote in, not Peterson, C.S. Lewis wrote in a book called Pilgrim's Regress.
Mm-hmm.
And he's writing a story where there's this little boy. It starts off the chapter, there's this little boy, and he's a bit naughty, and his parents say, oh, the caretaker doesn't like that. You need to be careful not to be that way. And the little boy would say, well, who's the caretaker?
Mm-hmm.
And the parents said, the caretaker is the person who owns these lands. One day we'll take you to meet the steward. And the steward does what the caretaker wants him to do. The steward is responsible for the caretaker of the land. Anyway, eventually the day arises where the little boy has to go. Oh, pardon me, I've said this wrong. The landlord. The landlord doesn't like when he misbehaves. So the day comes where the boy has to meet the steward, and the steward is the person who works for the landlord. And I'm just going to read that little section where he meets the steward, because I think it captures this same sense. So it says, after a long time, his parents came back again. So first the parents went in to talk to the steward. And then after a long time, they came back to the boy. The boy was waiting outside. They looked as if they had been with the doctor, very grave. They said that John must go in and see the steward too. Now it's time for the little boy to talk to the caretaker. And when John came into the room, there was an old man with a red, round face, who was very kind and full of jokes, so that John got quite over his fears, and they had a good talk about fishing tackle and bicycles. But just when the talk was best, the steward got up, cleared his throat. He then took down a mask off the wall with a long white beard attached to it, and suddenly put it on his face, so that his appearance was awful. And he said, now I'm going to talk to you about the landlord. The landlord owns all the country, and it is very, very kind of him to let us live off of it. Very, very kind. He went on repeating, very, very kind, in a sing-song, queer voice, so that John would have laughed, but he was beginning to get frightened again. The steward then took down from a peg a big card with small print all over it and said, here is a list of all the things the landlord says you must not do. You better look at it. So John took the card, but half the rules seemed to forbid things he had never heard of, and the other half forbade things that he was doing every day and could not imagine not doing. And the number of rules was so enormous that he felt he could never remember them all. I hope, said the steward, that you have not already broken any of the rules. John's heart began to thump, and his eyes bulged more and more, and he was at his wit's end when the steward took the mask off and looked at John with his real red face and said, better tell a lie, old chap, better tell a lie. Easiest for all concerned. And then he put the mask back on again. John gulped and said quickly, oh no, sir. That is just as well, said the steward through the mask, because you know, if you did break any of them and the landlord got to know it, do you know what he'd do to you? No, sir, said John. He'd take you and shut you up forever and ever in a black hole full of snakes and scorpions, as large as lobsters, forever and ever. And besides that, he's such a kind and good man, very, very kind, that I am sure you would never want to displease him. No, sir, said John. But please, sir, "Well," said the steward, "please, sir, supposing I did break just one of the rules, just a little one by accident, you know, could nothing stop the snakes and lobsters?" "Ah," said the steward. And then he sat down and talked for a long, long time, but John could not understand a single syllable. However, it all ended with pointing out that the landlord was quite extraordinarily kind and good to his tenants, and would certainly torture most of them to death the moment he had the slightest reason. "And you can't blame him," said the steward, "for after all it is his land. And it is so very good of him to let us live here. People like us, you know." Then the steward took off the mask and had a nice, sensible chat with John again, and gave him a cake, and brought him out to his father and mother. But just as they were going, he bent down and whispered in John's ear, "I shouldn't bother about it all too much if I were you." And then he slipped the card of rules into his pocket and let him go. I remember reading that a long time ago and just thinking, yeah, that's the feeling I had as a child growing up. Life is so wonderful. It's cakes and bicycles and fishing. But then there's this horrible something out there that you don't know how to deal with. And if you just screw up just a little bit, you're going to be totally destroyed. And I think C.S. Lewis paints a pretty good picture there of that. And it seems to me that we need to recognize both things. That there is this this potential danger, but there is also this kindness, this benevolence of life too that's available to us. Yeah. Got that from C.S. Lewis.
I see.
No reactions to that one, huh?
Yeah, didn't connected.
Okay. Then, well, maybe I won't, because I had another one that I wanted to read too, but maybe I'll just talk about it. Annie Dillard also writes a book, and this is about nature, creation and destruction. And she wrote a book called Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. And what she did for a year as an author is she went to live in a small cabin at a place on, I think it was Whidbey Island, which is in the northwest coast of America. And it's beautiful. And she wrote about how wonderful it was. She would go every day as a kind of botanist, just observing nature through all the seasons, observing the insects, observing the sunlight, the cows, the farming, everything. And then she'd go and write about it. I mean, she basically meditated on that part of the world. And the beginning of the book, she writes about all its gorgeous beauty. But then at a certain point of the book, at least I'll read this part, and I won't read so much, but...
it's okay, you can read. Yeah.
Then at a certain part of the book, okay, I need to find the section, just a second. It's 186, 187. Right here. Then at a certain part, she's reflecting on the dark aspects of nature. And she writes, "Evolution loves death more than it loves you or me. This is easy to write, easy to read, and hard to believe. The words are simple, the concept clear, but you don't believe it, do you? Nor do I. How could I when we're so lovable? Must I part ways with the only world I know? I had thought to live by the side of the creek in order to shape my life to its free flow. But I seem to have reached a point where I need to draw the line. It looks as though the creek is not buoying me up, but it's dragging me down. Look! Cock Robin may die the most gruesome of slow deaths, and nature is no less pleased. The sun comes up, the creek rolls on, the survivors still sing. I cannot feel that way about your death, nor you about mine, nor either of us about the robins, or even the barnacles. We value the individual supremely. Nature doesn't value the individual at all. It looks for the moment as though I might reject this creek life unless I want to be utterly brutalized. Is human culture with its values my only real home after all? Either this world, my mother, notice she uses the feminine for nature also, either this world, my mother, is a monster, or I'm a freak. She's talking about how she brings her morality to nature and finds that nature doesn't fit her morality at all.
Yeah.
Nature's cruel. Nature's a cruel bitch. And that's our mother. That's how she writes. And so all I want to point out is that Peterson is not alone in his thinking. There are other writers who recognize these things. And that, by the way, is very contradictory to the romantic thinking of nature that a lot of naturalists have, I think.
It's not only nature. It's also human nature, too, actually. Like a Game of Thrones. Like why people love this book, love this show, because it's like also express the truth, like which human nature actually also very brutal. You know, I think it's overestimated by modern people.
Yeah,
we didn't view human nature as that brutal as the nature now. We think because we are civilized. But you see, you need to be civilized to be not that brutal. So that's the thing. Actually, from nature, it's brutal. So, I mean, this show, why this show is got popular, because it express some truth there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like the nature, also the human nature, like from the beginning, there is this fierce aspect there, but we just didn't see it.
Yeah, I think at least in our society we have a too romantic view of things. For example, on the one hand, we romance civilization, as you said. We think if everything's civilized, if everything's clean, then that's safe. According to Peterson, that's not inviting Maleficent. And if that happens, what is her name? Aurora goes to sleep. She loses touch with reality. She falls into a coma. That's
coma.
That's the one romance. The other is, instead of romancing civilization, we have people romancing nature. But the problem with both of these is they're not recognizing the evil bitch that's in both of them. And you said, that's ourselves as well. We are that.
If you don't recognize it, somehow you're going to be eaten by it.
Right.
There was just several days ago, there was a news in China, and a girl, she just have so romantic about desert. So she kind of drive herself there. And a government already warning, so it's a kind of a dangerous place. Don't go like a tourist by yourself, And she just ignores. And she kind of, do this podcast every day, showing how she is going on. So just when she doing the podcast, then people heard she scream, then disappeared. So then later she was found dead there. But you see, it's also something because you're so romantic, have a so romantic view of the nature. You don't believe there will be, the dangerous power there. And also, I think because of this, you're not all the nature enough. It's also kind of your arrogance, like what Peterson said, 3 elements, one of the 3 elements. You're too arrogant about, so that's showing how ignorant you are, because arrogance always causes ignorance. So then that causes the death. So people say, oh, how pity, whatever. But I think that's the consequence you need to take. If you're not all the nature enough. So same thing. I think if you're not all the human nature enough, you also were going to be eaten. You're going to become the pawn of the tyrant's chest, or the pawn on the chest of the tyrant. Because they were going to say, oh, we are going to protect our nation. We're going to fight with the enemy outside, and I'm going to send you to the war for the honor, You're going to believe it, you're going to buy it, and you're going to sacrifice your life on the field. So, I mean, that's also ignorant. But what caused you the ignorant? Because you don't want to see the nature of the human being, you know?
Right.
So that become you just the prey. You can blame nothing. You can blame home. That's your own choice.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Knowing these things is already removes some of the arrogance. It makes us more humble in the face of life's realities. Then Peterson talks about, okay, so if you know these things, once you know these 2 basic principles of the yin and the yang, the chaos and the order that exist on these different levels of existence, then what can you do to welcome the negative and gain the positive, And his first one is sacrifice to the negative god to gain the benefits from the positive ones. Give a gift to the negative one. And he uses an example of just sacrificing your time to study at a university to get a good job, He says sacrifice is a part of our mythology all the way back in history. We all know that we have to give up something in order to please the gods and gain something else. So there's this barter and exchange that takes place sort of in reality. It's not all just get. Another way of saying it metaphorically is we need to invite Maleficent to the wedding to avoid an even worse curse. But also...
Not wedding.
Sorry, I keep saying wedding. Christening. But then there's another part too where he talks about the Sleeping Beauty being awoken by the kiss. Well, it's a kiss from whom? It's from someone who's courageous and strong, say. And one of the things he's saying is that we need to face life with courage. That's another thing. It means call up those elements of our personality that are needed to face danger, not hide from them. He also mentions, it's interesting, this is later in the section, he kind of identifies two things as being sources of hardship in our life. One is sexuality. Like, let's just back up a little bit. He also uses an example of a client. Someone who, I don't know, was in 4th year of university but had only finished 2 years of courses and was completely incapacitated. Just on Valium, sleeping 18 hours a day or something. Just totally messed up. And the long and short of it was that she was afraid of death. And they went through various stages. She began by going into a butcher shop, and it just took courage just to put her hand on the display case where the meat was contained. But then eventually she went to watch the butchers carve up the body of an animal. Later, they went to a place where they prepared the body for the funeral, a human body. She even got to the point where she put her hand on a dead body, and a dead human body. And each of these brought her levels of freedom. As she faced her fear of death, she gained more courage for life.
Yeah.
And so this also was Sleeping Beauty. Literally, this woman was sleeping her days away, 18 hours a day. She was woken by her own courage. And so then Peterson makes a comment at the end of the story. He says, as with Sleeping Beauty of fairy tales, my client's family had failed to invite the evil queen. They let their daughter be naive, and because of that naivety, she became incapacitated. And this left her completely unprepared for life's essential harshness. And what are the two things he identifies? He says the complications of sexuality, being a sexual being. So Peterson's saying this is one of life's essential harshnesses, is that we are sexual beings. And I just think that's interesting that he identifies that. And the other thing he says is one of life's essential harshnesses is that everything that lives devours other lives. It's just reality. And eventually our life is going to be devoured too. It's just how life is. And I thought that was interesting.
Why?
On the sexuality thing, that means Peterson's identifying that as a core struggle, sexuality.
Really?
And yeah, he's calling it life's essential harshness. That's at the core. One of the cores is, so what I take that to mean is how to live as a sexual being in the world. That's one of the fundamental challenges of an adult. And then the second part, that everything lives by devouring other lives. I just never heard anyone frame anything like that before, and I think it's true. We all live by devouring other lives. We don't want to accept that, I think, because then we realize that we ourselves are going to be devoured eventually too. Like, Someone's going to devour us.
What's devour exactly mean?
Eat. Eat, literally eat, but metaphorically it just means that your life is going to be given out for someone else. Like there's a quote in the story of the stone. It's sort of our fate that we prepare the wedding dress for somebody else's life. Something like that. I'll find that quote too and put it on the video. It's like the proverb in the Bible where the man builds up this all this wealth, and then when he finally decides to enjoy his life, he's going to die, and all of that's going to go to other people. It's kind of like we eat, but we're also eaten. And I think we all need to face those two things head on if we're going to get through this life reasonably well, without resentment, deceit, or arrogance is what we can avoid by recognizing these things. Okay. What else? So he talks again about his client, and he says that she needed to be awakened by the forces of exploration, courage, and fortitude. So that's that other half of the brain at the base of your skull. So it's kind of like a choice. Do you go for safety and therefore fall asleep? Or do you go for courage and risk and therefore you remain conscious and awake? I remember a long time ago we had a conversation about which life is better, the life of safety or the life of risk. And I can't remember how that conversation went. But I had a colleague one time, a long time ago, he asked me, and this colleague, he had the knack of getting right to the core of my heart, and he made me uncomfortable all the time. And he asked the question, what do you really want out of life? And I thought about it maybe for a minute or two. We were driving in the van. We're both teachers, and we had kids at the back of the van. And I looked at him and I said, I think I want comfort. And he just kind of blinked, but didn't say anything. And I thought, he's judging me. He thinks wanting comfort is not the thing I should be wanting. And actually, the moment I said those words, I felt shame. I realized that I wasn't rising to life. And frankly speaking, it was after that conversation that I started changing my views and realizing that I need to be more risky. I need to be more willing to face danger and discomfort and uncertainty and all of those things. So talking with him has always been uncomfortable, but I always gain something when I leave from him. And he's so gentle at doing that. I also remember these are just reflections about risk and danger, about culture. I remember a long time ago when I was, maybe I wasn't even a student in university yet. I was outside the front door, out on the street with my brother. We were throwing a football back and forth. And he was dressed very nice. He's 4 years younger than me. And I was dressed in clothes that maybe were 8 years old. They were, I just didn't think it was important to look good or anything like that. And he just started talking to me and he said, I realize that if you want to get something out of life, the more you conform to the culture, the more the culture will support you. And he said, if people think that dressing nicely is good, then why not do it? Why not? Because then people will look at you more positively and you'll gain more benefits from the society. He said, if you cooperate with society, society will give you gifts. And I thought about it, and then he said, just think of it this way. How are they ever going to get to know you unless you're willing to be known by them? Like if you're in Rome, do what the Romans do. Fit in. And he kind of persuaded me there, and I started changing my style a little bit. I didn't look like a slob all the time anyway, let's say that. And I believed it, and I went to university. And it's true, society has gifts for us if we collaborate, but society also has a bitch aspect as well. Or tyrant aspect, and I've run into that as well. I realized that, there are a lot of dangers, and, through my life I've had to struggle with things. I mean, I even had to hire a lawyer against my own government one time. So society does support, but it's also, even society can be dangerous. And so these are thoughts that were provoked with me by Peterson. Oh yeah, one last thing. He also says, knowing these characters gives you a map for the world. If any of these characters are missing, then you're going to be completely unprepared when that missing element shows up in your experience. And he says we have to be constantly aware of all these positives and negatives. And this is where I bring out my criticism. There are some people who are speaking very favorably about China these days, and I appreciate what they have to say. One of them is Eric Lee, and another one is Martin Jacques. He's from the University of Bath. Eric Lee kind of presents China to the world in a positive light from a Chinese point of view, and I quite respect how he presents himself. And also Martin Jacques, he says the Westerners know nothing about China. They don't understand China. Part of the problem is the West makes no effort to understand China because the West thinks that they're basically what the rest of the world should be. So why do we need to know about China? China should be more like us. Anyway, they have good things to say. That being said, those good things, for example, what Eric Lee says, all the defense that they say about China, explaining all the good things, and some of those things certainly make the West look bad, I can say. But my criticism is, it's too positive. It's not recognizing the dark side. You can't just see all the goodness and not acknowledge the negativity. And if people buy into that, if they only see the goodness, then they too are in danger of having a map. And when that ugly thing shows up, they won't know how to deal with it because they never acknowledged it. And I think that's the danger of being overconfident. I hope that that's not characteristic of everyone. Maybe that's just the way Eric Lee is when he's presenting himself to a Western audience. He has to appear confident, but it seems that there's a kind of triumphant sound to it, like we've found the final answer, and I think that's dangerous. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's it. Those are my reflections.
Okay.
Did you notice, did you think there would be a particularly Chinese reaction to all Peterson's talking?
What do you mean?
So this idea that life is made of these characters, and if you don't know that, if you have any one of them left out, then you're headed for trouble. How do you think a typical Chinese reading that might react?
You mean Chinese now? Or
Yeah.
Chinese in ancient time?
No, I mean now.
I think basically maybe will not accept that life has so many dark aspects. Because kind of we say we grow up under the red flag,
Yeah.
so everything is very positive, and we prefer this daily up, pursue the bright future attitude, we already excluded the darkness out, and I watched this How to Be Tyrant. This show, it's talking about North Korea. You can see from the face of the people, they're happy. They're entranced. They're crying for their leader. They hurry to their leader. And they felt they live in a very happy moment. So also they excluded the darkness out, But China is not like North Korea, because North Korea is too isolated. So they kind of living in the utopian world, isolated from the world. So they may don't have any dark aspect in the emotion world. But China may be more open to the world. So people will accept more dark energy, but still, it's kind of why you call dark energy, why you call negative energy. It's already defined as not good thing. So it's kind of you need to conquer your dark energy. You need to survive from the dark energy. It's not you getting along with it. So I think need time to accept this Peterson's dark energy talking.
So they would probably not accept Peterson.
They will. I saw lots of Peterson's videos. It got popular in Chinese media too. People start to spread his talking. Yeah, but basically about the responsibility talking.
I see.
Yeah, so clean up your room talking. So I think not about this dark energy talking, but I think actually compared to the responsibility talking, I think that responsibility talking of Peterson is just superficial, maybe the outfit, the outside, the coat. But actually underneath this dark energy talking is his underwear, It's very, very deep inside. And it's the very close, I don't know how to say it. It's the very core theory for his whole theory. It's the dark energy talking. It's how you see this dark energy in yourself, and how you can produce a good or hero feeling from the obstacle, whatever you had. I think that's the basic thing of Peterson theory. Not just that clean up your room, it's a superficial metaphor. It's just, it's the result, I mean. As long as you can deal with this dark energy, you will naturally produce the responsibility to clean up your room. Not vice versa,
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, so I'm just keeping the Chinese angle on this just for a moment. So if most Chinese would not accept that dark energy thinking, but I take it you are accepting that, what's the benefit for you to accept this thinking? How does it attract you or cause you to feel it's valuable or worthwhile?
I think it makes you stronger. Like a Game of the Throne. I love that show. Why? Kind of through this dark energy, you gain the power to survive. You know? Because we have a Chinese psychologist. His name is Wu Zhihong. And he talked about this assert energy. He didn't talk dark energy, but I think it's come from the same source. And actually, this is the same thing they're talking about. But he just used a more positive word to describe this dark energy, which in Peterson's word, you know? So you see, it's a difference because he is a Chinese.
Yeah.
He preferred this more positive word to describe the human nature.
Yes.
He used assert energy. Attacking energy.
Attacking.
Yeah. Attack seems not that positive, not that good, but it's also neutral, not dark energy. He didn't use dark energy.
I see.
But I think
so
to me, I believe the three is the same. It's kind of like we can say also this dark energy, assert energy, attacking energy. It's your living, your life, you know, like how to say, it's like original, it's core of every human being. Their life, they need to grow, they need to survive, they need to live. That's something they need.
Yeah.
You know? It's like the soil to the flower. If you don't have the soil, you die. So I think this is something you never noticed. Or you try to flee away from it to be too clean. Or you just pretend it doesn't exist. Put a nice clothes on it. But it's there. So I felt it make me more strong than before. Until I noticed this.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we still have one more section of this chapter. I heard, I don't know if it was you who said, that this chapter kind of summarizes Peterson's whole book.
Yeah, it's Peterson himself said.
I see. Okay, so...
Yeah, he just introduced to his some people he is interviewing and talking about this book, and he said this chapter is the summary of his book.
Okay, so we have it on Peterson's own word. So, and it is really this that I love about his book, too, all this talking. So
you're going to give it a very high score then?
I think so. We'll see. We still have the last third to talk about. That's coming up next.
Okay. Sure.
Okay, so any last comments that you were still thinking about, or?
Oh, I think it's gonna raining.
Okay.
Okay, just have a good day.
Okay, see you then.
Okay.
Bye. That's it for today. Come back and check out some of our other videos. Please put your comments below, hit like and subscribe with notifications if you wish to join in conversations with us on other topics.